They blamed me for ruining the restaurant right there on stage. We almost didn't open because of him. He's a walking disaster in a tool belt. Thankfully, Landon cleaned up his mess before it burned the place down. I said nothing. 1 week later, their lawyer begged me to accept a $58,750 settlement. Hey Reddit, my name is Marcus, and I'm 32 years old, working as an electrical technician in Seattle. I've been in this field since I was 19, working my way up from apprentice to certified technician with specialized training in restaurant and commercial systems. I come from a family where food has always been the centerpiece of our lives. My grandparents immigrated from Italy in the 1950s and opened a small pizza place that eventually grew into a well-respected local restaurant. My father took over in the 1980s and expanded to 3 locations across Seattle. I grew up surrounded by the business, spending weekends and summers helping out, learning everything from prepping ingredients to managing inventory. I assumed I would eventually take my place in the family business. But then there's my younger brother, Landon. He's 29, and from the day he was born, my parents made it clear he was special. While I was practical and reliable, Landon was creative and visionary. When he showed interest in cooking at 15, my parents immediately sent him to weekend culinary classes. After high school, they paid for his education at a prestigious culinary institute in New York, while I attended community college on my own dime while working full-time. When Landon returned to Seattle 3 years ago with his culinary degree, my parents couldn't stop talking about his innovative approach to traditional Italian cuisine. They immediately started planning to open a new upscale restaurant with Landon as the head chef and creative director. This would be their legacy restaurant, Tavola, meaning table in Italian. They invested nearly all their retirement savings and took out substantial loans to secure a prime location in downtown Seattle. Throughout this process, I remained supportive. I've always been the reliable son, the one who shows up when needed and helps without complaint. When they started renovations on the restaurant space, I offered my professional services for free. Over 6 months, I put in hundreds of hours installing complex electrical systems, designing and implementing the kitchen power grid, setting up specialized lighting, and ensuring all systems met code requirements. Work that would have cost them at least $50 if they'd hired someone else. During this time, I noticed some concerning things. Landon would often change plans midway through implementation, forcing me to redo work. When I raised concerns about the cost implications, my parents would wave it off, saying, "Landon knows what he's doing," or "This is his vision. We need to support it." I also observed Landon taking shortcuts with suppliers and permits. But whenever I mentioned it, my parents accused me of being jealous. The restaurant was scheduled to open in March, but various delays pushed it to June. On opening night, my parents invited me to attend as a guest. I was excited to finally see the culmination of everyone's hard work, including my own. I put on my best suit and arrived early to help with any last-minute technical issues. The place looked stunning. Local food critics, restaurant industry people, and several investors were in attendance. My parents greeted me warmly but seemed distracted. Landon barely acknowledged me, busy charming the critics and local reporters. About halfway through the evening, as guests were enjoying their appetizers, my father clinked his glass for attention. He thanked everyone for coming and began highlighting the journey to opening night. He praised Landon extensively as the genius behind Tavola, describing his culinary vision in glowing terms. Then, my father called me to the stage. For a moment, I thought they were finally going to acknowledge my contribution. Instead, my father put his arm around me and said, "And this is our oldest, Marcus. We almost didn't open tonight because of him." A confused murmur went through the crowd. "We had planned to open 3 months ago," my father continued, "but we experienced some technical difficulties with our electrical systems that Marcus was supposed to handle. It cost us thousands in repairs and delayed revenue." The crowd chuckled, but thankfully, my mother chimed in, taking the microphone. Landon managed to find solutions to the problems his brother created. That's what family is for, right? Cleaning up each other's messes. More laughter. I stood there, completely stunned, my face burning with humiliation as people turned to look at me with amusement. The electrical issues they were referring to were actually caused by Landon's last-minute design changes and insistence on using cheaper, non-commercial grade equipment against my advice. I wanted to defend myself, to tell everyone the truth. But as I looked around at the laughing faces and my brother's smug smile, I realized no one would believe me. So I simply nodded politely, stepped off the stage, and quietly left the restaurant. No one, not even my parents, noticed my departure. That night, as I sat in my apartment replaying the humiliation in my mind, I received an unexpected call from Jules, a local food journalist who had briefly dated Landon about a year ago before a messy breakup. I had always gotten along well with her during their relationship, and we had occasionally kept in touch. "Marcus, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice serious. "I was at Tavola tonight. and what your parents did was awful. But there's more you need to know. We met at a 24-hour diner where Jules told me something that made my blood run cold. According to her sources in the industry and local government, Landon had been using my name on unpaid invoices and blaming me for various problems at the restaurant. More seriously, he was under quiet investigation by the city's business board for misreporting finances to obtain certain permits and licenses. I think they set you up as the fall guy tonight in case things go south with the investigation, Jules explained. I know Landon, and he always needs someone else to blame. I was devastated but not entirely surprised. Deep down, I had always known my family saw me as the expendable one. I told Jules everything about the free work I'd done, the warnings I'd given about shortcuts, the invoices and receipts I'd kept meticulously. By the end of our conversation, Jules asked if I would be willing to go on record for an article she was writing about unethical business practices in Seattle's restaurant scene. After a sleepless night, I decided to stand up for myself. I gave Jules access to everything: emails, blueprints, proof of work, invoices showing my name being used without my knowledge. Within a week, Jules published a feature article in Seattle's most respected food and business publication. The article wasn't just about me. It exposed Landon's pattern of misusing funds, forging expense reports, and manipulating city permits. My story was presented as one example of how some restaurateurs cut corners and exploit others to get ahead. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The article went viral in the Seattle food community. The restaurant was investigated and temporarily shut down due to concerns about unlicensed electrical work. Ironically, because I was never formally hired or paid for my services. Despite my qualifications, Landon lost several potential sponsors and partnerships that had been in the works. My parents, meanwhile, went completely quiet. I knew from mutual friends that their phones were constantly buzzing with calls from angry investors questioning the financial management of Tavola. I received dozens of messages from family members and my parents' friends, some supportive but many accusing me of betrayal. "How could you do this to your family?" became a common refrain. I ignored every message. What I didn't ignore were the calls from other restaurant owners and developers, impressed by the detailed work I had done at Tavola, which was highlighted in Jules's article. Within weeks, I had multiple job offers. I eventually signed a contract with a high-end restaurant group as their lead systems technician for all their locations in the Pacific Northwest, with a salary nearly double what I had been making before. It's been 3 months since the article was published. Tavola reopened after paying substantial fines and bringing everything up to code, but the reputation damage was severe. Reviews are mediocre, and the buzz has died. I hear they're struggling to fill tables most nights. My parents have tried to contact me numerous times, alternating between anger and tearful pleas for reconciliation. Landon sent one text accusing me of jealousy and sabotage before blocking my number. I haven't responded to any of them. Not because I'm still angry, though part of me is, but because I finally understand my worth. They made me the joke of their launch party, the scapegoat for their poor planning and ethical shortcuts. Now they're facing the consequences of their actions, and I'm thriving in my new position. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing, if there was a less public way to handle the situation. But then I remember the look on my father's face as he publicly humiliated me, and my mother's laughter joining the crowds. They chose their favorite son long ago. I've simply chosen myself now. Update, 3 days later. First, I want to thank everyone for the overwhelming support. I honestly didn't expect this post to get so much attention, and reading your stories of similar family business betrayals has helped me feel less alone. A lot has happened in just 3 days, and I feel I need to update you all. The morning after my post went viral, I received an unexpected email from my Uncle Robert, my father's older brother. Uncle Robert had been part of the family restaurant business years ago, but left after a dispute with my father. We'd always stayed in loose contact, but I hadn't seen him in person for at least 5 years. His email was brief but supportive. "Marcus, I read what happened. History repeats itself. Call me when you're ready to talk." I called him that evening after work. Our conversation lasted nearly 3 hours. Uncle Robert revealed that he had left the family business 20 years ago because my father had pulled something similar, taking credit for Uncle Robert's financial investment and business connections, then gradually pushing him out of decision-making. When Uncle Robert confronted him, my father bought out his share at a fraction of its worth, leveraging some legal loopholes in their partnership agreement. "Your father has always believed that the end justifies the means when it comes to business," Uncle Robert explained, "and your brother learned from the master. What shocked me most was learning that my grandfather's original restaurant had actually been a partnership between my grandfather and his brother-in-law. My family's entire restaurant legacy began as a joint venture, but somehow that part had been erased from our family history. The Alessandri family has a habit of rewriting history to put themselves at the center, Uncle Robert said, referring to our family name. Armed with this new perspective on our family history, I decided it was time to take more formal action. I consulted with a business attorney specializing in family disputes after reviewing all my documentation, emails, texts, and recorded conversations. Seattle is a one-party consent state for recording. She confirmed I had a strong case for both defamation and unpaid labor. They publicly blamed you for problems you didn't cause, and they benefited from your professional services without compensation, she explained. Plus, using your name on invoices without your knowledge could potentially involve fraud. We decided to start with a formal demand letter rather than immediately filing a lawsuit. The letter outlined my contributions to Tavola, valued at $58.750, a conservative estimate based on standard industry rates, requested compensation, and demanded a public retraction of the statements made about me at the opening event. The response came not from my parents, but from their attorney. It was a coldly worded message that acknowledged certain services rendered, but claimed they were gifts freely given in a family context. The letter also implied that any further action on my part would result in a countersuit for damage to the restaurant's reputation. That same day, I received a tearful call from my mother. Unlike her previous messages begging for reconciliation, this one was different. "How could you involve lawyers? We're family," she cried. "Landon is devastated. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. Is money really more important than your family?" I remained calm and simply asked, "Was family more important when you humiliated me in front of the entire Seattle restaurant community?" She had no answer for that. Meanwhile, my new position at the restaurant group has been going exceptionally well. After learning about my situation, my new boss, Elena, has been incredibly supportive. Yesterday, she pulled me aside after a meeting. "I want you to know that what you're experiencing with your family isn't normal or acceptable," she said, "and I want you to lead our new expansion project in Portland. It's a promotion and comes with a substantial raise. The opportunity is incredible. It would put me in charge of designing and implementing all technical systems for 3 new restaurants in Portland, plus overseeing a team of 4 technicians. It would also mean relocating, which honestly sounds appealing right now." Another unexpected development came from Jules, who contacted me about a follow-up article. She's received information from a former line cook at Tavola about potential health code violations that were covered up before the opening. She wanted to verify some technical details about the kitchen setup. During our conversation, Jules mentioned that Landon has been telling industry people that I sabotaged the electrical systems after being fired from the project. A complete fabrication, as I was never employed in the first place. "Your brother is digging himself deeper," Jules said. "Several people have contacted me with their own stories about him. There's a pattern here that goes beyond your family situation. As for my extended family, the response has been divided. My father's side has largely closed ranks around my parents and Landon, with a few exceptions like Uncle Robert. My mother's side has been more supportive, with several cousins reaching out to express their support. My cousin Maria, who works in restaurant management herself, called with an interesting piece of information. Apparently, before opening night, Landon had told several family members that I had made dangerous mistakes with the electrical work that nearly burned the place down. This was obviously preparing the ground for the public humiliation that followed. "I didn't believe him even then," Maria said. "You've always been the most careful person in this family." Last night, I drove past Tavola on my way home. There were only a handful of customers despite it being a Friday night. A quick check of their reservation app showed plenty of available tables throughout the weekend. I don't take pleasure in their struggles, but I won't lie. There's a certain vindication in knowing that their attempt to build success on deception and exploitation isn't working out. My attorney is preparing our next steps, which will likely involve filing a formal lawsuit unless they respond more reasonably to our demands. I'm also seriously considering the Portland opportunity, which would mean a fresh start away from Seattle and all these painful associations. Through all this, I've been reflecting on loyalty, family, and self-worth. For so many years, I defined myself by my reliability and willingness to help my family. I now realize that true loyalty can't be one-sided, and that my worth isn't determined by my usefulness to others. The situation continues to develop, and though it's painful, I feel stronger and clearer than I have in years. For the first time, I'm putting myself first, and it feels right. Final update. 4 weeks later. It's been just over a month since my last update, and so much has changed that I barely know where to begin. I want to thank everyone again for the incredible support. Your comments and messages have been a lifeline during this difficult time. I'm writing this update from my new apartment in Portland. Yes, I took the promotion and moved away from Seattle 2 weeks ago. The distance has been healing in ways I didn't anticipate. Being physically removed from the places and routines that reminded me of my family has given me mental space to process everything. Before I get into what happened with the lawsuit and my family, I want to share how the new position is going. The Portland expansion project is incredible. 3 restaurants in different neighborhoods, each with unique technical challenges. I'm managing a team of 4 technicians who are all skilled and professional. My boss Elena has given me full authority over the technical aspects of the project. And the executive chef actually listens to my input about kitchen functionality and safety. It's such a stark contrast to how things were with Landon and my parents. Now, about the lawsuit. 3 days after my last update, we received another response from my parents' attorney. This time, the tone was completely different. They offered to settle for the full amount we had demanded, $58,750, plus an additional $25,000 for emotional distress. The settlement included a non-disclosure agreement about the financial terms, but required a public statement from my parents acknowledging my contributions to Tavola and retracting their previous statements. My attorney was surprised by the sudden change in position. Something must have happened to make them so eager to settle, she said. That something became clear the very next day when Jules published her follow-up article. It was even more damning than the first, featuring testimonials from 3 former Tavola employees about health code violations, verbal abuse in the kitchen, and financial improprieties. The article also included documentation showing that Landon had falsified his culinary credentials, exaggerating his positions at restaurants in New York, where he had actually worked only briefly as a line cook. I had no involvement in this article and was as surprised as anyone by these revelations. Jules had mentioned investigating further, but I had no idea how deep the deception went. The day after the article was published, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. It was Thomas Garcia, one of the main investors in Tavola. He wanted to meet privately before I signed any settlement agreements. Against my attorney's advice, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop halfway between Seattle and Portland. Thomas was direct. I've invested $300,000 in Tavola, and now I discover it's built on lies. Your brother isn't the chef he claimed to be. Your parents aren't the business experts they presented themselves as, and they've alienated the one person, you, who was actually helping them succeed. He explained that after the first article, the investors had held an emergency meeting with my parents and Landon. My parents had assured everyone that the issues were minor and largely due to my incompetence and jealousy. The investors had reluctantly accepted this explanation. But now, Thomas continued, we know they lied to us too. Several investors are preparing to sue for fraud and misrepresentation. What Thomas revealed next stunned me. Apparently, my parents were planning to use the investor money to pay my settlement. Without informing the investors, Thomas had discovered this when he requested detailed financial statements and noticed a large sum set aside for technical consulting resolution. I'm telling you this because you seem to be the only honest one in your family, he said. And because I have a proposition for you, Thomas and several other investors wanted to restructure Tavola completely. They proposed buying out my parents and Landon, bringing in a new executive chef with verified credentials, and potentially offering me a position as technical director and minority partner if I wanted it. We've all seen your work, Marcus. It's solid. And we've all heard how your family treated you. This could be your chance to reclaim what should have been partly yours all along. I was speechless. The offer was tempting. A chance to turn Tavola into something legitimate and potentially profitable. But it would mean returning to Seattle and working in a place filled with painful memories. I told Thomas I needed time to think about it. When I told my attorney about the conversation, she advised caution but agreed that it was an interesting opportunity. Just make sure everything is properly documented this time, she warned. While I was considering Thomas's offer, I received an unexpected visitor in Portland. My mother. She showed up at my new apartment unannounced, looking exhausted and years older than when I'd last seen her. At first, I was tempted to turn her away, but something in her demeanor made me invite her in. We sat in uncomfortable silence until she finally spoke. The restaurant is finished, she said quietly. We're filing for bankruptcy next week. The investors are suing us. Your father had a minor heart attack from the stress. I felt a twinge of concern about my father's health, but remained silent. I didn't come here to make you feel guilty, she continued, surprising me. I came to say I'm sorry. What we did to you was unforgivable. We got caught up in Landon's charm and vision, just like everyone else. She explained that Landon had left Seattle abruptly after the second article, emptying his bank account and leaving them to deal with the fallout. He hadn't even called to check on my father after his heart attack. We favored him his entire life, and in the end, he abandoned us at the first sign of real trouble, she said, tears streaming down her face. While you, the son we took for granted and humiliated, are the one we actually raised, right? I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part ached for my mother sitting there so broken and defeated. I'm not asking for your forgiveness or your help, she said. I just wanted you to know that I recognize what we did, and I'm deeply ashamed. After she left, I called Uncle Robert for advice. His response was measured. They're still your parents, Marcus, despite everything, but that doesn't mean you have to rescue them from consequences they brought on themselves. The next day, I called Thomas and declined his offer about Tavola. I explained that I needed a fresh start away from Seattle and the family business. He understood but left the door open if I ever changed my mind. Instead, I proposed an alternative. I would connect Thomas and the other investors with Uncle Robert, who had decades of restaurant experience and had expressed interest in returning to the industry now that he was semi-retired from his consulting business. Uncle Robert could help them restructure Tavola or create something entirely new with the assets. As for my parents, I've decided not to involve myself in their financial problems or the bankruptcy process. However, I did call my father to check on his health and let him know about the connection I'd made between Uncle Robert and the investors. The conversation was brief and somewhat stilted, but at least civil. The settlement with my parents has been finalized, with the money coming directly from the investors as part of an agreement to limit their liability in the larger investor lawsuit. My parents published a statement on Tavala's website and social media acknowledging my contributions and retracting their previous statements about my work. Jules's articles have led to some positive industry changes. The Seattle Restaurant Association has implemented new guidelines for credential verification and family employment practices. She's been nominated for a local journalism award, and we occasionally meet for coffee when she's in Portland for work. My new life in Portland is challenging but rewarding. The professional respect I receive daily is something I never experienced in my family business. My team looks to me for guidance, and other departments value my input. I'm dating someone new, a pastry chef I met through work who has no connection to my family drama. Looking back on everything now, I realize that what happened wasn't just about a family betrayal. It was about recognizing my own value when others wouldn't. For years, I defined myself as the reliable brother, the dutiful son, the one who shows up without complaint. I allowed myself to be used because I thought that's what family was about. Unconditional sacrifice. Now I understand that healthy relationships, family, professional, romantic, must be built on mutual respect and reciprocity. My skills, time, and loyalty have value, and I no longer offer them freely to those who won't recognize that worth. My father built his identity around being a successful restaurateur. Landon built his around being a culinary prodigy. I now see that I had trapped myself in the role of eternal supporter, never claiming my own identity or success. The family restaurant business was never going to be my legacy. My legacy will be the systems I design, the teams I lead, and the standards of integrity I uphold in my work and life. Sometimes, losing what you thought was important reveals what truly matters. I lost a dysfunctional family dynamic but found self-respect and a meaningful career path. That's a trait I can live with.